Hello, everyone. Welcome to another USB Checkoff Chat. I'm Kellen Havikin with the Brownfield Ag Network and joined today by Philip Good, who is the treasurer for the United Soybean Board and a farmer leader from Mississippi. Phil, appreciate the time here and welcome in.
Thank you. It's good to be with you. I'm glad to be with you, and thanks for having me on.
Hey, glad that you've come on. It looks like we're going to talk a little bit about some future United Soybean Board priorities. Maybe before we kind of get into what those priorities are, how does USB function in terms of funding A, B, how we kind of get to this idea of finding priorities for USB?
Sure. Well, first, let me start with the USB is composed of 77 volunteer farmer leaders, and they are from all the different states in the United States, soybean farmers that are looking how we can invest in our future for soybeans and as soybean farmers. And so the soybean checkoff, and more specifically the USB, is one of the ways that we can invest in our soybean future. So we are looking at the responsibility of educating, promoting, and doing research. And so the checkoff dollars would be divided between the states. Half go there, the other half come to USB. And so our 77 volunteer farmer leaders are divided into groups that look at different programs to invest in. And so the three different areas that we specifically look at are health and nutrition, connectivity and infrastructure, and then innovation and technology. And then from those three groups, it's also divided into supply and demand.
Perfect. Well, thanks for kind of walking us through that. Well, let's dive into these three areas and some of the priorities that USB has had. I want to start with infrastructure and connectivity, looking at fiscal year 24. What's in store here for USB?
Well, the whole carbon market and where we fit and all the different alternatives are out there for us as soybean farmers. So there's an educational aspect that I think every one of us needs. This is like a whole unknown charted area. So the ESG scores, which are environmental, social, and governance scores, are important to identify soy's value when it comes to carbon capture, soil health, carbon markets. That's one area. Another area would be to identify gaps in water infrastructure. The water infrastructure is very important to the Mid-South, but it's important to the entire United States. Supplies are going up, soybean meal, even soy oil are coming down. So it's important for that, along with all the other water infrastructure areas. And also we need to address railroad logistics, specifically to help when it comes to Lake soybeans, different things going to the Pacific Northwest. That's just three areas that stand out to me right now.
Well, let's maybe real quick touch on some of the issues with waterways. I know the Mississippi River has had plenty of challenges here the last year and a half. We saw low levels on that river, struggling to get barge traffic up and down, and now all of a sudden, we've been talking about flooding issues. How important is it to have this infrastructure be efficient so that way there's not as much uncertainty there?
Oh, it's very important. First of all, the barges need to carry a full load. We don't need half-filled barges, but the Lower Mississippi Dredging Project in the past is something that we're very proud of. So with that project, USB farmer investment saved around 13 cents per bushel of freight. They were able to increase the amount of bushels per ocean vessel, and that's going to add over $46 million in value for U.S. soybeans. Also, the Lock and Dam 25, that investment led to a $732 million commitment from the Army Corps of Engineers. And then there's other things like the Port of Grays Harbor and just different investments. Very important to, like I said, supplies going up, soybean oil, soybean meal coming down.
Without investment from the USB standpoint, do you think that we would have seen investments from local, federal, or state governments to help improve some of this, or what's kind of the emphasis that's been put on with soybean farmers getting involved here?
With the 77 farmers that from around the United States, they come with all these different perspectives. They come with their different local issues, suggestions, solutions. Those are things that we get the opportunity to discuss. Maybe at times, look at different programs from different perspectives. I think all those different perspectives come together and give us probably some of the best conclusions, suggestions, and investments that we could have.
Philip, let's talk about health and nutrition here and the importance of developing priorities for the upcoming year.
Well, health and nutrition is important, whether we look at plants, whether we look at animals, human, aquaculture, even soil health. All those are extremely important. Animal agriculture consumes 97% of soybean meal, which that is a big deal. So when it comes to the health of, like in my area, poultry is extremely important. Chickens, on my small county road, there are hundreds of chicken barns, thousands of chickens, just in my local area. And so poultry is one of the big consumers of U.S. sustainable soybean meal. And I think, one of the things that we've heard and learned from chicken producers is the size of the nugget, the size of the little piece that they consume is important. When we look at aquaculture, I'm also a catfish farmer. It's something that's being developed in the United States and around the world. Being able to use sustainable, nutritious soy in like catfish, all different types of species of aquaculture, looking at raceway technology as a sustainable, environmentally safe growth area for the future. I think there's just a lot of opportunity there.
Tell me more about your catfish operation and its intersection with soybeans. Tell me more about that.
Well, I started in catfish, I guess it'd be about 25 years ago. And it was a way for me to diversify, actually consume some of the soybeans through soybean meal that were grown on my farm. So I started in catfish where I purchased fingerlings and raised them for food fish. And they are sold around 1.5 to 1.75 pounds size. We're able to do this in about one growing season. And so it's exciting to be able to grow something that you're proud of. It's nutritious and it's in a totally controlled environment. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for aquaculture in the future for the United States and for feeding around the world. I think in other nations as well. And I think that's part of our desire through the WISH program is bringing that message, that education to other parts of the world where they will then become soybean meal consumers and purchasers from the United States as well.
We've talked in previous USB Checkoff Chats about some of this aquaculture investment in South America. What do you think are some of the obstacles to grow aquaculture in the U.S.?
Well, I think we've had a lot of new technology when it comes to the raceway technology. So there's been efficiency increases when it comes to oxygen monitoring, very specifically. Feed conversion is drastically increased. It's sort of like a new development that we've learned so much, even most recently, that it's just grown astronomically on what we know, the research, the efficiencies, the economies of scale. We do need to have the market first. Then you have to have the processor. Then you have to have the grower. And so it's kind of all those have to kind of grow at the same time.
What's maybe been an advantage under this umbrella of aquaculture that we're seeing in South America, for example, and its relation to why USB is investing and continuing to invest in those areas?
Oh, when you look at like catfish, for example, the feed efficiency is absolutely amazing. It beats everything. So when you look at the small amount of feed to get the pound of protein, it blows my mind. So catfish feed conversion is outstanding, and it beats chickens, poultry, hogs.
Philip, the last thing I want to quickly touch on is research. That's obviously a major part of what USB does and trickling down into state soybean boards. What are some areas of research that USB is focused on in addition to some of the areas that we've discussed here today?
Well, high oleic has been something that we've heard time and time again. We're starting to see some of the benefits and other things besides the just directly the human health oil standpoint. Had the opportunity in New York to talk to a processor and dairy farmers there that are looking at roasting whole high oleic soybeans and seeing that benefit for the dairy cattle and coming through with the milk production. I thought that's just been very fascinating to me to just start to see that in the dairy realm. In the hog realm, we're realizing that we've heard about high oleic oil being sprayed on hog feed. So there's research being done with that in with hogs and in the swine industry. So just a lot of different things of different areas that we're looking at, and we're just kind of scratching the surface and discovering more and more.
This may be a hard question to answer, but I'm just curious, at what point do we go from the research phase of some of the examples you've given to, I don't know if I want to say widespread use by farmers or producers, but what's kind of maybe the time goes, okay, we're in the research phase to now we can kind of deploy it across a large swath.
Well, I think the communication aspect is so important. You're touching on that and bringing that. So another part of what we have is communication and education, which is another division under USP, where we have farmers that are serving in that area as well. So it's about getting the word out and educating. So it's about educating the public. It's about educating the private sectors, the food industry, animal agriculture, all of it. So education, getting the word out, getting this research out. A lot of it is done in the individual states. Some of it's done by universities. Some of it are done by different corporations, but all that research, if there's any questions, please go and check out unitedsoybean.org.
As we wrap up here, Philip, I want to know, how do you engage other farmers, whether it's about USB priorities in general or the larger, broader picture of sustainability and that story, as we're often hearing right now in this sector?
I'm very proud of what the U.S. soybean farmer is doing when it comes to in the world perspective. Let me just tell you real quickly. My dad said 30 years ago that the dirt on our farm was like a bank account. He said that you've got to make deposits and that you can't just make withdrawals. And I thought that was something that I took to heart 30 years ago. And here we are 30 years later talking about soil health, sustainability. It's just as important now as it was then, and that is our soil. It all comes down to the soil, the health of the soil, and it all is reflected back to us as humans. And I am proud of the U.S. soybean farmer and its sustainability story and vision and work that it's doing. We are leading the world, and I'm proud of that for the United Soybean Board and the United Soybean Farmers.
Philip, that's all that I've got on this checkoff chat. Do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me. And I think one of the things that I'm really proud of is that every dollar that the United Soybean Board gets is resulting in a $12.34 return. That's an amazing return. It's a great investment in the soybean future. So thank you for having me.
Well, thanks, Philip. That's Philip Good, the USB treasurer and farmer leader from Mississippi. Philip, thanks again for joining us to talk about USB future priorities. That's been another USB Checkoff Chat. I'm Kellen Havikin with the Brownfield Ag News team.